So what we thought would be quite nice is if we tell you a little bit about ourselves. But first of all, thank you very much for having us, and thank you to everyone for being brief, so that you give us sort of a little bit of time to talk through sort of who we are and what we offer. So I'll hand over to Andrew to tell you a little bit about who he is.
So I'm James of the Heart, so I'm the husband. So a little bit about me. If anybody knows me, I love F1. That's one of my big hobbies. I enjoy walking the dogs every week. I try and keep fit as well, doing exercise, etc. I've also got a bit of a history buff. I like anything to do with World War II. And one of the reasons we're married is I've got 2 motorbikes. Joe told me if I wanted a motorbike, we had to get married. So that's a true story. I like anything with wheels that gets my attention, anything with an engine.
So because Andrew's just talked about himself, I'll talk about our family because he always misses those bits out. So we've managed to produce 2 children. So we've got Jake, who's 22, and he's a keen chef. In fact, he cooked or baked cookies last night. So that was no good for me because I'm trying to obviously cut back. So they were plain chocolate cookies. So they were really nice. He's also a cinematographer. And then we've got a daughter, Molly, who's 20, and she's doing business psychology at Manchester Uni. So I don't like anything motorsport-wise. I do Zumba, and I'm a keen traveller. So my ambition is to see the orangutans in Borneo. I haven't managed to do that. And I'm really inspired by Race Across the World. So I'd love to do that at some point when we have a little bit more time on our hands. But together, we basically combine our sort of 20 plus years experience in business and obviously help people with sort of their AI needs.
So what I want to do is just talk to you about how does AI work and how does it predict and use the words, how does it create things? So we've all heard the line, Mary had a little what? So maybe put in the chat, what do you think the next word's likely to be? So let's all put that in the chat because I know you're all on mute. So we've got some things. So yeah, so Mary could have a little what? Well, first of all, we could say, just click that on that screen, Joe. That's brilliant. Our clicker's not working. Mary could have a little walk. Mary could also have a little sleep. Mary could also have a little brother. So all those sentences are correct, and this is why AI makes things up and can't predict things. And in reality, we all know Mary had a little lamb, but all those other 3 options and many more could also make the correct sentence. But this is what AI does. It predicts using a thing called tokens what the most likely next word is going to be. And lamb is in this case appended only after prediction. So there we can see it is, and there's Mary's little lamb dancing across the screen for everyone to see. And this is how AI generates things and how it works.
So we've noticed the chat's disabled, so we're now going to improvise, if that's okay. So what we'd like people to do is, if you've got access to an AI model, ChatGPT, Claude, etc., if you could just ask it the following question, to pick a random number between 1 and 25, and then we're going to ask you just to kind of unmute yourself and just kind of shout out the number that you've got. So if you could just do that, please, just take a minute and put that into your large language model. So ask it to pick a random number between 1 and 25. So hopefully there's a few people doing that.
17.
Okay, we've got Mike at 17. Any further people?
17.
17.
17.
17.
That's weird.
17.
Any more 17s? Okay, so we predicted we would all get 17.
Yeah.
So is it a magic trick? No, it's not. Andrew, do you want to explain?
Yeah, so what AI is doing is essentially the most random number that humans pick between 1 and 25 is 17. And AI is trained on that. So it's not picking a random number. What it's picking is what is the most likely random number that humans pick. And as you all know, pretty much most of the group, we do this all the time, and typically 80 to 90% of the people get 17 and are able to do that. So it's just worth remembering that when you ask it for things like that, if you prompt it like that, you might not get the answer you expect. Something else to talk about. So I don't know if anybody knows how many books AI has read, but it's quite a lot. It's about 260 million. And AI is really good at reading text. The problem with that is when you prompt it, if you ask it a question, it's got 260 million books to reference, and it's really hard for it to get the information back because it's doing that really quickly. So you need to narrow it down what you're asking it. And even if you said, oh, I want to speak about cookery, cookery's had 250,000 books published. So even then, that's a huge number of books for us to reference. So if you said, okay, what about top 10 UK chefs being on television? You know, Ramsay, Delia, that kind of crowd. Even that crowd has written 250 different books. So that's a huge amount. Whereas if you said, I want something out of Jamie's 15-minute meals, which I have a copy here, there's only one version of this book. Jamie hasn't published another. And that is the specificity we need to think about when prompting AI, when we're asking it a question. We need to get down to the Jamie's 15-minute meals. And you might even say, I want to get to the recipe on page 40, which is about chicken and rosemary. So when you're thinking about it, if you ask it a general question like, how do we get a better business plan? It's going to give you a really general answer. You've got to give it some context. You've got to give it more information than just that question. You really need to do that to get to that Jamie's 15-minute meal kind of prompting. And then the other thing is AI is not Google, and a lot of people treat it like this. They use very short prompts, just like they would in Google, very short sentences. This is a thing called the installing effect, and it's when we use what we call learned behaviors to apply to new technology, and it's not getting us the best results. So we need to speak to AI in a different way. It's like learning a new language. If you do that, then you'll be much better. If you're all going to learn, we've got a house in Portugal and we're trying to learn Portuguese. It's quite a tricky language. If any of us were trying to learn a new language, it would take us quite a long time. And that is the way we need to think about prompting and asking AI. So to do that, we help people by creating frameworks to prompt in much more effective ways. There's things you can do like ask before answering to get the AI to ask you a number of questions before it gives you an answer. All these different things and these different methods help you get better answers out of AI. But we shouldn't treat it like Google because it's a lot more than that, even though the interface and the chat window looks very, very similar. Hopefully, some of you heard of hallucinations. So here's an example of something. So for those of you in the Yorkshire, I know most of the group are, you'll probably know the Queen's Hotel in Leeds. And I've got AI to write me a nice review of the stay that I had there and how much I enjoyed the rooftop pool and the fact that I could see all the way to Manchester. Now, of course, none of those things are true, but AI happily wrote me that review and created me a picture as well. And this is just something that happens with AI because it's been programmed to give you an answer. It will give you an answer whether the answer is true or not. And it's really important that we use techniques and tricks and tips to help us get those answers to be better than they normally are.
So another question for you. So again, if you can kind of take yourself off mute and kind of shout this out. What percentage does AI hallucinate? Anybody got any ideas? So if we could just have a few answers.
5%.
How much, sorry, Tony?
5.
5%. Okay. Any other takers?
Well, I was going to go 60.
60 from Sam.
Or I would say 40 maybe.
Or Sandra a little bit lower at 40. And a final
15. 15.
15, thanks, Perrin. So it's actually 30%. Okay, so if we're not prompting AI well, then you're going to get basically 30% hallucinations. But using frameworks, then basically we can get this to around 3%. And that's very similar to a human. So it's really important that we're using frameworks and prompting correctly. So other ways that we can reduce this, obviously, if you've got a RAG system, so if you're using Copilot, so this is basically a retrieval augmented generation, and that's where it basically uses the brain, if you like, that's sitting, the data in the background to go and get context about you and what you do. And of course, it is getting better as the models improve. But obviously, we want to reduce this down because that means that we spend less time prompting and going down rabbit holes. So another quick question. So this was some research that was done basically by the government in February 2026. So again, if we can just shout out some numbers here. So what do you think? How many companies are using at least one AI tool? So this is basically generative AI tools. Anybody got any idea? What percentage of companies are using them?
30%.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, 30%.
Yeah, anybody else?
20%.
20?
60.
60?
Just
Okay.
throwing numbers out.
So again, we've got huge variation there in numbers. So actually, it's only 16%. But, if you were basically looking on socials, or any kind of, sort of media platform, you would think everybody is using generative AI, and that's just not the case. So it's 16%. And this is even more staggering. Only 5% of businesses are basically planning to use AI. So basically, if you're using AI in your business, you're already kind of ahead of the curve. I mean, we were staggered when we kind of saw these sort of stats. And this is even, kind of bigger. 79% basically have no plans at all to use AI. And this is over the next, kind of year. So, if you are moving forward on this, you're probably, kind of ahead of that curve.
So there's some risks in using AI and there's some risks in not using AI. So what are the risks? The risk to data security, there's some challenges of that. And obviously we've got some members in the group, and James talked about, what his business was at, and the website, he just helped with his customers. And AI has got some real risks with that. And some of the models are very, very good at finding some of those problems. Hallucination and outputs can be really, really poor. Governance and compliance and over-reliance. So these are all things that are challenges to a business. But also there are some risks in not using AI. So there's lost momentum time, missed opportunities slipping away, and businesses can fall behind. If you're not in that 79% thinking about how you can start to bring it into your business, or if your customers are thinking that, then you're going to lose that competitive advantage. And it's really important that we all move and try and do that. But there are some challenges with that. So one of the challenges is ghost AI. So I don't know if anybody's heard of that. And this is something that Microsoft did a survey sort of in late 2024. And essentially they found that 75% of knowledge workers, and a knowledge worker is somebody who sits in front of the keyboard, was using Ghost AI. And what's Ghost AI? Basically, they've got their phone, they've opened their own copy of ChatGPT or Claude, take a picture of something at work and say, how to solve the problem. And that's a real data risk, because all that information, all that IP has been fed into someone's personal model profile and not being kept in the business. So, and this is a real challenge for organisations, because it's a real, we advise people on their risk register and train their employees about how this is approached. Also, another challenge is data privacy, because most people, when they use AI, use a free model. And if you use a free model, like with anything, if it's free, you're the product. And what the AI models do, they have a little button in the background that basically means improve the model for everybody. And what that does, everything you put into that model, they take it and use to improve their future models. And if your private information, if your data, or any financial information in, they're collecting all of that. And that potentially could come out in somebody else's prompt later down the line. So that's a real risk. And most people don't do this. 80% of users don't change that feature, according to Stanford University. That's another risk. So if there's one thing you do today, if you use AI and you're not paying for it, go into the settings and just turn that switch off. And if you can't find it, drop Joe or I a message and we'll help you find out where it is in that particular model. But there are some opportunities in AI. This is some research done by Anthropic, and they're the creators of the model called Claude. Claude's one of the most powerful models, and it's gained a lot of interest recently. And what this graph shows is, so if you look at the blue line is what AI could do currently today without any improvements. If you look in management, finance, business, etc., life and social sciences, it's a very, very high percentage of the roles. But the red part is where it's actually being used. So there's a huge disparity between what AI can do and what it's being used, and that's because of this lag because 80% of businesses aren't using it. And that's the gap. So there's theoretical coverage and the observed AI coverage. But to do this, you've got to have a plan and you've got to train your team. It's not just going to happen on its own because, as we've discussed, using AI is like speaking a different language. And some of the things that you can do there, you think, well, why am I be bothered? There's a tool called Deep Research. So if anybody's used this tool in AI, this is one of my favorite features. And all the models offer this in the paid versions. It basically allows you to find out information and do research on your market. You can verify it, make sure it's trusted. You can prompt the model in a way to do that. And you can get yourself out, a 60-page playbook from a single prompt, from doing this information, from doing deep research. It's a really, really powerful tool. Other things you can do, so anybody who's got a young person in their household, or maybe they want to learn something themselves, some of the models offer what we call guided learning. So Gemini does this. ChatGPT had this, but unfortunately in the last couple of weeks I've turned that feature off, but you can still prompt it to do that. And Notebook LM is a really good model to do that. So if you've got any young people who are at university or doing their A-levels, these are really good tools to do this. But you can start from primary school and PhDs. If your child comes home with that maths homework and maths wasn't your strong point, you can use AI to help you give the answers without sort of explain it, but it can teach you in this way. So the guided study helps you do it, and it acts like a tutor. That's a really, really powerful way to use it. And then also what we've got to hear, some of these things you can create with agents. So these are the agents we've created in our business. So we have Proposal Polly. There's an agent who helps us create our proposals. We have a meeting with the customer. We use an AI note taker. We upload that transcript to Polly, some other information, and we use that to produce our proposals and work on that customer and help us produce that proposal in a really simple and easy to understand way. And that saves us 13 hours a month. It's really, really cool. It's really, really good for us to do. So it's just something that that we can use and do with that. And it's something that's very easy to set up once you know how to do it. And the thing that I'd say, you might question yourself. You might go, well, why do I need AI? And if you were digging a swimming pool in your garden, you wouldn't use a teaspoon. And that's the old-fashioned way of doing things. What you do if you were digging a swimming pool, you'd have one of these. You'd have a little digger and you'd use it to do that. Now, the swimming pool might not be as neat and polished as digging it with a teaspoon, but you can do it a whole lot faster and then you can finish it off. And this is what AI enables you to do. It gives you a shortcut to speed things up. So you go from digging a hole with a teaspoon, which would take forever, to be able to do things really quickly. And you can really increase your productivity, 3 or 4 times X in some areas. In some areas, you could do 10 times the things that you could do before using AI by using the tools and using them effectively.
So as Andrew said, basically, if you use the tools effectively, you can turn your team into superheroes. And the research shows that individuals can basically 4x their performance, just being, using the tools effectively, knowing how to prompt, using all of the features, so opening all of the doors of the large language models, and then starting to use custom agents, and then beyond that, kind of agentic, kind of processes to basically make their businesses more efficient. So who are our customers? So basically, we work with any sector. We've worked with a really diverse range from, organisations that basically sell guns, and bullets and things, to the military and police, right the way through to kind of micro organisations and basically solopreneurs. So we can work with any size. And basically, our customers, I guess, face, sort of similar challenges. So they've either started using AI, they might have rolled out, tools, for example, like Copilot, and they've got really low adoption. And one of the main reasons for this is because people have kind of tried using it, they're using it like Google, they get frustrated, so they just give up. And that obviously affects adoption rates. What we tend to find is when we go in and deliver our first courses, most of the organisations go to 100% adoption, because people can see in their role how they can save time, and they know then what's in it for them. And it starts to kind of, sort of lower those feelings of frustration and so forth. sometimes organisations just don't know where to start. They know that they want to use AI, they want to stay ahead of the competition, but they just don't know what the first steps are. And other organisations have security concerns. So maybe they realise that their employees are using, kind of ghost AI, and obviously that's putting the business at risk, or they don't know which tools to pick from a security perspective. And sometimes organisations have inconsistent results. So, they've rolled out tools, they're investing, but, people are using them at different rates and different speeds. And they might have a range of people from, I don't want to touch it, to people that are kind of racing ahead. So that's sometimes where we get involved to kind of look at how do we get consistency across the organisation. And often we find organisations have no plan. And we highly recommend that you have an AI manifesto in your business. So what do we offer through our open training? So these are some of our flagship courses. So our starting course is we basically teach people how to prompt effectively and do deep research. That's a morning course. We then basically teach over a couple of mornings agents for your digital workforce. So this is where we teach you how to build custom agents in your business. We're also now, this is a new course, and we're doing this basically with Queen Mary University in London. And this is basically a course focused around marketing. And you get basically a Queen Mary accreditation for doing that as well. We also offer either Copilot for team skills, or we do something similar with Claude as well, because that's got lots of different features, including Claude Co-work, Claude Design, etc. Then we do specific courses around data analysis. So if you use lots of data in your space, then we do that. And then we get into image and video creation as well. So apart from the open training, we deliver bespoke training. So we go on site and basically work with organisations and bespoke it to their needs. We also offer coaching. We also offer advisory. So we follow what we call, which is our 8-step roadmap. And work with organisations to go through their AI journey. And we also offer keynotes as well. And what I'll do is I'll drop our services brochure in the chat before we all go. So we're just going to do one of these because I know we need to leave a couple of minutes for questions. So again, if you could just kind of unmute yourself and kind of shout out. So is the image number 1 AI generated, or image number 2 AI generated? So if you could just shout out which you think is AI generated.
Number 1.
Number 1.
Both.
Oh, that's handy.
Which one is it?
Anybody else?
2.
Yeah, 2.
2.
Okay. Oh, click on the screen. So this is the image that's AI generated. So image number 2. I am actually going to do another one because it just shows, how difficult it is to decide. So which one is AI generated? Image number 1 or image number 2?
2.
1.
No idea. No idea.
I'd go 2.
Yeah, 2.
1.
Oh,
So number 1 is AI generated. The reason that we do these is this is the world that we're living in. And I like to think about it as well from a young person's perspective. This is what we're consuming. And it's really difficult sometimes to know if it's AI generated or not. So, it's really important that we take, young people, business leaders, business owners, people in businesses on that journey so that they are informed, they know how to use the tools. And obviously then they can go on that journey safely and effectively. So that's us to a close. And if you've got any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
I feel like I should have loads of questions, but it terrifies me. It's just so out of my league in terms of, but yeah, just stress the importance of knowing what you're doing and not. There was an interesting article in the you might have seen it, Sandra, in the Law Gazette last week about some solicitors who'd been really sanctioned for
Yes.
misleading the court because they'd they referred to some law, some
Law that
cases
doesn't exist.
doesn't
Yeah.
exist, and they pleaded it in a trial, and they've actually, I think one of them's been, there's this massive overriding duty of a solicitor not to mislead the courts, and the courts have taken a really dim view of it, haven't they, Sandra? And essentially, I think one of the solicitors is in the process of possibly being struck off for misleading the court.
However, and as it is in most legal disciplinary issues, the judge focused on the trying to cover it up. So the judge didn't criticize using AI. The judge criticized you haven't admitted that this is wrong because of AI. So I found that really interesting, because I think it is important that in the industries like legal industry, where we are very cautious, very, oh goodness, maybe not, because of the regulatory and compliance of everything we do. And I do appreciate you, but I think it's important that we do go, continue with the times and use AI when we can.
I think that was it was excellent, that guys, really enjoyable.
Really was.
And what I would say is that I've witnessed it from having younger kids. So I won't say younger kids. I've got a 26-year-old and a 23-year-old. The 23-year-old's just come out of uni and is just about to go into a law firm. So I witnessed him using, is it Chat LM, whatever it is. So that's it. So he literally couldn't be without that. So I've been on that sort of journey with him. But also as well, interestingly, it was part of the interviews that he's gone through with all sorts of law firms, because obviously kids do all sorts of interviews. I would say almost 100% of them concentrated a key element of their interview on AI, on what he thought about AI, how AI would interact with their law firms, law cases that Sandra and Georgina have just mentioned about hallucinations in court cases. So actually, even though maybe as an older generation we think it's not there, the younger generation, it's part of what they're expecting for their job moving forward. So
I think we've seen it. We've seen it coming into an awful lot of customers. And you talk about ghost AI usage. We've had one customer this week who's mandated that we take a sledgehammer to the business and we remove Copilot completely from their environment. Now, Microsoft baked Copilot into everything. They call it immersive experiences, but it's there in Word, it's there in Excel. And to remove it becomes quite a challenge, but they've had to do it because their customers have turned around and said, we don't trust you to use it responsibly. So it's a challenge.
We advertised for a paralegal 6 months ago, and we got quite a few applications actually, and so many of them. I mean, it's hard to say, and it's unfair. You don't want to penalise the applicants, but a lot of the covering letters, we sort of asked for send us your CV with a fairly detailed covering letter while you're applying for the post, and you could really tell the ones that had been AI'd and the ones where the young people had actually taken the time to write the letter themselves. And we were sort of saying, on the one hand, we were all in our 40s and 50s on the team, and we were all like, want to sort of immediately thinking discount the ones that have done AI, because actually the ones that haven't have taken the time to write a letter, and it was really obvious who had really and who hadn't, or we felt it was. But then you're thinking, but that's not fair, because these young people, it's what they don't know, it's what they expect, it's just their life, and they wouldn't think it was a lazy way of doing it. So us in our 50s are like, that's lazy, whereas actually it's not fair to take that approach. So we really had to step back and go, no, let's look at the content and not just discount the ones that have used AI, which was really tempting.
A really good point, Georgina. I mean, one of the things we take on our training as an example of that is my dad's typewriter that he had bought in the 1960s from Hong Kong. If somebody rocked up today and said, I don't want to use one of those fancy computers, I want to use my old typewriter, you wouldn't employ them.
No, you wouldn't.
You need to think about AI. The genie is out the bottle, whether we like it or not. This is the technology that's going to most profoundly change what we do the most quickly. So if we don't learn to surf and ride that AI wave, we're going to be in trouble. And we recognise that, so that we're trying to help people on that journey.